So the first error is that the bill is addressing a situation that doesn't happen and that babies aren't born alive and left to die without care in Australia. And, for example, the submission by the SA Abortion Action Coalition says the bill seeks to regulate an extremely rare, if non-existent, procedure. But this is not true. Looking at the data as I have combed through from the Victorian and Queensland health reports, we can see that 724 babies have been born alive and left to die without any legal rights to mandatory care following a failed abortion. We also know through questions asked or noticed by MP Nick Gorin in WA that 27 babies have been born alive and left to die. We know from a coroner's report in the Northern Territory and another one in New South Wales that there's been 2 more babies in those states. We know of 54 babies born alive and without any rights to care in South Australia. So these, unfortunately, other than Queensland and Victoria, we don't have a complete picture, but we can assume that the numbers are higher than what I've just recounted to you today. So the fact that this bill addresses a situation that doesn't happen is incorrect. It does happen, and the bill addresses a real need for equal treatment for all babies who are born. The second error that's been made is that this bill mandates resuscitation of babies that are born alive and prevents the application of palliative care. So, for example, in the submission by Marie Stopes International, they say the bill proposes mandatory resuscitation of a fetus which shows signs of life when outside the uterus. If this bill was successful, it would mean that palliative care is not provided at birth. Other organisations, the Office of the Rural Health Commissioner, SA Abortion Action Coalition, Australians Women's Health Network have also made this same error, that the bill would prevent palliative care and it mandates resuscitation. In Section 9 of the bill, it's clear that the duty of a health practitioner is no more than and is equivalent to what would be provided to other babies born in situations other than abortion. So it doesn't mandate resuscitation, it doesn't prevent palliative care, it's just a duty to provide medical care equivalent to other babies. And indeed, in Section 9.4 of the bill, that is made clear through the example given, in that it says specifically life-saving emergency treatment can be given, but also palliative care can be given too. So that's a clear error that's been made, that this bill would actually prevent care to babies and mandate resuscitation. Not true. The third error that's been made about this bill is that babies who are born alive after an abortion are not really alive, and that they're virtually dead already. They only live for a matter of minutes. In other words, this doesn't happen. It's a non-issue. It's a bill about a non-issue. I think I saw in the press that it's a bill about virtue signalling. And so MSI, Marie Stopes International, has stated in its submission that in rare cases, if a feticide has not been used, a fetus may show signs of life, and signs of life are involuntary movements. Signs of life do not equate to life. And similarly, in the submission by the State Government of Victoria, they have said that where a medical termination is performed at 20 to 22 weeks and no feticide is performed prior, there's a very small chance of a live-born baby. And typically in this uncommon circumstance, the baby is born with a heartbeat and may take a few breaths, dying shortly thereafter. But again, these statements by MSI and the Government of Victoria, it doesn't reflect the evidence. So in 2018, a peer-reviewed study in the highly reputable Journal of Obstetrics and Gynaecology found it looked at 241 infants who had undergone late-term abortions without feticide on babies between 20 and 24 weeks gestation, and it found that more than half were born alive, that the median survival time was not a matter of minutes or a few short breaths, as the State Government of Victoria alleges, but was in fact 32 minutes. And at the outer limit, one infant in this study actually lived and breathed for 267 minutes. We also know of Jessica Jane. She was born alive and placed on a metal kidney dish for 80 minutes without any rights to medical care. And although she was premature, she was apparently healthy, had good AGPA scores. Her birth weight was 515 grams. And in another academic study in the American Journal of Paediatrics, this study looked at babies who are born who have a birth rate of less than 400 grams, and those who were given care after birth, over 25% go on to survive and live. And so for Jessica Jane, who was born at 550 grams, her chances of survival are obviously reasonable. So that's the third error, that this is about babies who aren't going to live, who live for a matter of moments or seconds. It's not. Some of these babies live for a long time. The fourth error is that babies who are born alive after an abortion are not going to live at all. So the submission by the Public Health Association states that pregnancies terminated after this period are rare and typically occur precisely because of the life-threatening conditions that will also prevent the survival of the fetus. But the data doesn't bear this out. So even in Victoria, where we do have the reasons recorded for a late-term abortion after 20 weeks, we can see that 44% of babies are aborted after 20 weeks because of a psychosocial reason, which means that the fetus is physically healthy. So, and then for the remaining proportion, there's a wide range of congenital abnormalities suspected and ascertained that can provide a reason for a late-term abortion. So the submission by the Public Health Association that this is for life-threatening conditions that would prevent the survival of the fetus is just not true, not borne out by the data from Victoria. The submission by Children by Choice states that fetal viability, the ability to survive outside the womb, has been demonstrated at 22 weeks of age to range from 0 to 34%. Babies who are born at this age have a heartbeat but no other indicators of survivability. So again, this isn't borne out by the data. So the Murdoch Institute for Children's Research says that babies born at 23 weeks have a 45% chance of survival, with odds dramatically improving if they survive the first week. According to the Paediatrics Journal in the US, they say that gestational age is imprecise. Approximately one half of 23 weekers we take care of are in fact 22 weekers. They say in that journal, and I quote, "These perceptions that treatment is futile reflects a widely held but erroneous belief that treatment of babies born at 22 weeks is futile. Decisions for babies born at 22 weeks should be made the way of all good clinical decisions. They should be made by taking into account all the relevant clinical information and parents' preferences and then making an individualised clinical judgment." And that's what's missing in this situation. We have a situation in Australia where babies are born alive, but they don't receive an individualised clinical judgment mandated by law because they're born alive as a result of a procedure that was meant to end their life. And so this is the gap that this bill seeks to address. And we even know of the situation of Tim in Germany. He was a Down syndrome boy whose parents wanted to abort him after the Down syndrome diagnosis. And we know in Australia 9 out of 10 babies lose their life because of Down syndrome in utero. But little Tim, he was born alive and cried, struggled to breathe, wriggled for 9 hours on a metal plate. And eventually a nurse who was involved in the abortion, who was just waiting for him to die, just picked him up, wrapped him up with a blanket, controlled his temperature, gave him a little bit of milk, and he went on to live and was adopted out. And I think that story to me really, and his adopted parents wrote a book about his life. And to me, that sums up what this bill is about. It's about equality and it's about a principle of non-discrimination. And it's the fact that we should have laws that mandate equal treatment for all babies in Australia, irrespective of how they came to be. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Howe.